You only need to type the words Cowboy Bebop into the YouTube search bar to be met with hundreds of video essays about the series, the meaning of nothing, the bittersweet tragedy, the beauty of, you're gonna carry that weight, most of which discuss the series' themes of existentialism and loneliness, creating a narrative that this show is dark and depressing, which is true, but I think it's only half the story of the superb narrative of Cowboy Bebop, and completely misses out on ridiculous moments like these. So in this video, I want to talk about my favorite episode of the series, and one that I think is largely forgotten in the grand scheme of Cowboy Bebop, Mushroom Samba. Mushroom Samba opens up like any other episode. The Bebop crew is out of food, and someone secretly munched up on all the rations. Faye. Luckily or unluckily, their ship crash lands on a desert-like planet much like the setting of an old western. Except, rather than cowboys, this episode is about a goofy hacker child and her hyper-intelligent dog. One of only 3 in the series up to this point where Edward takes a lead role. I've always found her character to be rather interesting, as she's so drastically different from the rest of the cast. Unlike her companions, she's not dwelling on the past or trying to find a meaning in her existence. Life has just begun, and everything to Ed feels so new, fresh, and exciting. So even the dreadful task of searching a deserted wasteland for food becomes a grand adventure into the unknown. Look at how she runs over to a dumpy watermelon stand, and tell me this isn't the most happy-go-lucky person in the entire world. At the stand, we have the absolute pleasure to meet Coffee, who appears to have been inspired by a 1973 film of the same name. Her character was played by Pam Grier, who's considered by many to be cinema's first big female action star, playing titular roles in many blaxploitation films in the 1970s. It's the first of many parodies throughout the episode of the blaxploitation genre, a genre that's described by the New York Times as supercharged, bad-talking, highly romanticized melodramas about Harlem superstuds, the pimps, the private eyes, and the pushers, who more or less single-handedly makes Whitey's corrupt world safe for black pimping, black private eyeing, and black pushing. So you can imagine the type of comedic situations that may arise when a 13-year-old hacker and her genius dog are placed into the mix. Director Shinichiro Watanabe was a huge fan of American television and pulled from a ton of different genres in the creation of Cowboy Bebop, which is part of why his show resonated so much with North American audiences. Ed and I sneak into the trunk of Coffee's car and arrive in an old western city, reminiscent of a setting in an old western movie or the Overwatch map Route 66. Can y'all believe they're doing a collab? Because I can't. Anyways, in the town they stumble upon Domino, who, unbeknownst to them, is the kingpin of a massive cartel, dealing shrooms and corrupting the entire city, and no, I'm just kidding, it's just this morbidly obese dude making psychedelics in his ship. But dang, do these things pack a punch. Just look at what happens to poor Ein after eating one.
We have to share and share alike!
Look at how he just hops along. It cracks me up every time. Oh, and apparently this dude's brother died from one of the mushrooms, leading to this ridiculous line.
No? Do you want to know why I drag an empty coffin like this wherever I go, huh? I'll tell you, because I'm putting your corpse inside it!
After seeing Ein's reaction to the mushroom, Ed tricks the rest of the Bebop crew into eating the mushrooms as well. I say trick, but all she really had to do was leave it out for their greedy bums to take. And that's how we ended up here. Spike climbing the stairway to heaven, Jet talking earnestly to his bonsai plants, and Faye taking a dive in the toilet. Okay, remember how I said this episode is purely comedic, satirical fun? Well, I lied. These hallucination sequences carry some really dark undertones that are surprisingly deep for an episode called Mushroom Samba. Faye's vision of drowning in the flooded bathroom represents how overwhelmed she feels in this new, futuristic world. The fish that surround her are all swimming in unison, and she alone is standing starstruck in the middle. Society and other people are moving at this breakneck speed, while she is still figuring out the reality of her past, present, and future. She's swimming upwards, or trying to, as her attempt to flee from the unfamiliar world and return to her old life on Earth. On a shallower note, you could also interpret this as Faye trying to escape her monetary debt, though I think her debt is more of a literal metaphor used to show that she's tied down by her past. Jet gets in a weird philosophical conversation with his bonsai plants, which I think has 2 different meanings. The first is showing that beneath his gruff exterior, he's a thoughtful man who can hold sophisticated conversations. He often struggles to connect this part of his personality with the rest of Bebop's crew. Spike has a one-track mind, Faye's a spoiled brat, and Ed is a brat. The second layer to this sequence is Jet's immense loneliness. Past the fact that he's talking to his plants, Jet is the only member of the Bebop who's not seeking anything new from his past. Sure, he's trying to escape it like Faye and Spike, but there's nothing keeping him strung along like Faye trying to figure out her identity or Spike's turmoil with Vicious. There's no lonelier feeling than having no goals, ambitions, or future to look forward to. As we visited earlier in the video, Spike is walking up the never-ending stairway to heaven.
Hey, mister. This here is the stairway to heaven. You know that, don't you?
Obnoxious little frog.
While this is stupid, funny, and ridiculous, it's a clear representation of Spike's journey from a syndicate member to a good-natured hero. Outside of Watanabe's obvious Led Zeppelin reference, Spike is literally walking aimlessly to his own death. The frog is warning him about his impending doom. If he keeps down the same path, he's sure to perish. But Spike blows him off, oblivious and uncaring for his demise. Interestingly enough though, most of the scene is shot from Spike's right side, showing only his right eye that is supposedly the only one able to see the present, whereas his left eye in comparison can only see the past. I think this is intentional to show that Spike is only focused on the path ahead of him. He's trying to walk through his life, the stairway to heaven, without focusing on his past. And the frog? In Japanese mythology, the frog symbolizes rebirth and resurrection. So the Bebop crew has problems. But this episode is about Edward, so we as the audience get to see the crew from her perspective, and well...
By the way, just who am I anyway?
They look ridiculous. To Ed, this existentialism about finding meaning in your life ironically means nothing. It's just her friends tripping over some bad mushrooms. Shifting back to our satirical fun, Ed and I return to the town in search of Domino, the obese drug dealer who they have now discovered has a huge bounty. Coffee escapes the police and joins the chase while Shaft tries to follow but is stopped by, well, a brain freeze. Ed and I catch up to Domino and blast him and themselves with
Stinky gas.
flushing them both off the ship and into the hot desert sun. I like to imagine that Ed's bare feet hurt from touching the hot concrete, and that's why she looks so goofy when she runs. This little dance reminds me of stepping in hot sand at the beach and trying to keep your feet off the ground just to cool them down. Or maybe Ed is just that excited to be in a high-speed chase. Mushroom hunting blasts as the scene develops into a full-scale chase scene with Shaft, Coffee, and Ed all pursuing Domino on a high-speed train. And I have to say that I'm peeking out from Ed's backpack is so cute. Like, look at his face in the wind. He's like a little dog panning outside the window of a car, and I can't get enough of him. And then he attacks Domino, takes out Shaft and Coffee all by himself before thanking a cow on the tracks for stopping the train and Domino. Badass move from Ein. The Bebop crew come out of their hallucinations in a disgruntled state, but they were revitalized after learning that Ed's mushrooms are worth 100 million wulong each. However, before they can celebrate, an officer comes by asking for information about Domino and the mushrooms. Jet and Faye lie through their teeth, but Ed bursts out, excited to share her adventure from the day. The monetary value of the mushrooms is invaluable to her. She's just happy to have gone out on a successful adventure. But none of this matters because Spike obliviously walks out with the bag of shrooms. Except in a strange twist of fate, the cop tests them and they turned out to be shiitake mushrooms all along. Rewinding back to the high-speed pursuit, Domino was carrying 2 bags of mushrooms. So the one that Ein ripped out and tossed at Shaft must have been the drugs worth 100 million, while the leftover bag was full of dupes. Something I haven't mentioned yet is that Mushroom Samba is sandwiched between 2 intense and dramatic episodes about Jet and Faye's past. Specifically, it falls right after Black Dog's Serenade, where Jet reunites with his old partner in the police force and hunts down the man who took his arm. The investigation leads to a gunfight where Jet comes face to face with the villain that led to his leave of the police force. Except it's not the man he was hunting, but rather his former partner Fad, who's revealed to be a crooked cop working for the Syndicate. Forced to kill his own partner, Jet is stunned by the sudden turn of events that rewrites his understanding of his own life. And it's on this somber note that we're led to Mushroom Samba, a simplistic story about a girl and her dog looking for food. So I think the message that Watanabe is trying to convey is that it's okay to be a kid sometimes, getting excited over little things, adventuring out into the unknown, and taking the present in stride. It cuts to a few days later, and the crew is eating shiitake stir-fry, shiitake stew, shiitake salad, and shiitake on ice, to the dismay of Faye and Spike, but to the excitement of Ed and Ein. Their mission to find food for the ship was successful, and they went on a grand adventure in the process. Sometimes it's about appreciating the little things and finding enjoyment in the mundane. Mushroom Samba is all about how Ed sees the world, how a child acts in a world full of adults. Had this episode been about Spike, Jet, or Faye, it wouldn't be nearly as funny or ridiculous. They would have trudged begrudgingly through the desert, beat up the guy at the stand, and stolen all of his watermelons. That's it. End of episode. No coffee, no shaft, no domino, and most importantly, no magic mushrooms.